CPD because of their work setting. So let's look at the questions that they usually ask. The first one is saying pharmacists not working in clinical care tend to ask, I only develop regulations. I am a pharmacist but not working directly with patients. I research drug interactions and drug usage. I train pharmacists or pharmacy support personnel. So these questions, they are asked because some are confused, thinking that if they are not in a clinical setting, then they are not expected to submit CPD. If you go through the domain and the competencies, and all of us will find something that is suitable for our work environment. So let's make sure that we go through the domains and the competencies, and we will find something that goes with research, something that goes with pharmacists who are in academy or those who are training. The competencies and the domain, they are so broad that they covered all the sectors in which our colleagues are practicing in. So there's nobody who's exempted from submitting the CPDs. As long as you are a pharmacist in South Africa, you should comply with the CPD regulation. And the facts are, pharmacy practice is not restricted to the provision of direct clinical care only. It includes working in a direct non-clinical relationship with clients, working in management, administration, education, research, advisory, regulatory or policy development roles, and any other roles that impact on safe, effective delivery of service in the profession. So this answers all the questions that we have seen in the previous slide. Therefore, your obligation is to choose CPD activities relevant to your scope of practice, and please make sure that you make time to find a CPD that is relevant to you. We are all catered, and fortunately, so just make time and you will find something. And however, you are not precluded from choosing other types of CPD if this information is useful in your personal development. So you can choose others for your own personal growth. You are not restricted from doing that. And another interesting part of CPD is how to learn. CPD is not only in pharmacy profession, even other health professionals, they are expected to do CPD, but ours is different from theirs. So here you will see how are we different from them. Firstly, let's look on the definition of CPD. It is the process by which registered persons maintain and enhance their competency throughout their professional career. And it encompasses a range of activities, including continuing education and supplementary training. CPD enables registered persons to develop in their area of practice and demonstrate competence. So this is what CPD is all about. And when you look at the bottom there, you're seeing a cycle. So CPD is a cyclical activity. This means that it doesn't have an end. It's a continuous thing. As long as you are practicing as a pharmacist, you're having a responsibility to continually develop yourself so that you remain current and relevant to what will be happening at that time. So the good thing is, with regard to the CPD in our setting, You are not expected to attend any training. You just submit what you have learned as you are practicing. So the CPD submission process will go as follows. Each pharmacist is expected to submit a minimum of 6 CPD entries, and please remember, no evidence must be attached. And there are 2 different cycles to pick from. So as you're submitting your 6 CPDs, you're having 2 cycles from which you can choose on how to submit your CPD. The first cycle is the 4-step CPD cycle. In this cycle, there is no limitation of the CPD activities, meaning you can submit as many as you wish. But in this cycle, I'm sorry, one needs to plan what is it, I mean, or let me say the 4-step CPD cycle requires prior planning and outline and allows submission once all 4 steps are completed. So with this one, you plan your CPD activity, and once you have submitted all the 4 steps, then the CPD will be, you can only submit once you have completed all the 4 steps. And then with the 2-step CPD cycle, here you are limited to submit only 3 CPD activities per year. And this one is instant. There's no prior planning that is required. Immediately when you feel you have learned something that you can submit, which is relevant to your practice, then you can do so. And you follow no thought process. So you submit whatever instantly. And then let's look at what the 4-step and the 2-step cycle entails. With the 4-step CPD cycle, there are 4 steps like the name says. The first step is the reflection. The second step is the planning, implementation, and evaluation. So with the first step, this one we call it reflection on practice, meaning you look at what you're doing and try to identify the gaps that are there, which you need to fill in order for you to provide a better service to the clients. So once you have identified that gap, then you go to the next step, wherein you will look on how or what is it that you need to do in order to close the gap that you have identified. And here you will decide, what are you going to do? Are you going to enroll for a course? Which course do you think will be relevant for you? So here you plan on all the activities that you need to do in order to meet or to close the gap that you have identified. Once you are done with your planning, then the next step will be to implement whatever that is in your planning. If it means you need to attend a symposium in order to get the information that you need to enhance your performance, then that's what you will indicate under the implementation, whether you have attended it as it was planned, what is it that you have learned from there. And then the last step is evaluation. Here you evaluate whatever that you have learned. Is it helping you in your practice? Is it relevant? Based on what you have learned, did you manage to close the gap that you identified under reflection? If not, what then are you going to do more in order to close that gap? So that's what the 4th step is all about. And we also have in the 2-step cycle. Remember, we said with the 2-step cycle, there's no planning. we said it is instant. So here the first two steps are eliminated, that is the reflection and the planning, they are not there. You just start with the implementation and evaluation. And what constitutes a good CPD activity? So a good CPD activity should have a learning title, which ensure that the title is appropriate and relevant to the domain. It should have a learning need, which is about what knowledge gap do you seek to fill. And then it must also indicate the learning method or activity, which can be measurable or non-measurable. So that should be indicated as well. And the learning outcome, which is what have you learned and how did it improve your skills. So when we're talking of a good CPD, is a CPD that is covering all these areas. And the learning activities, like we said, it can be measurable or non-measurable. So sometimes when we're referring to the non-measurable learning activities, we're referring to activities like self-study, attending to a case study or conference. Those are non-measurable activities. Or one can opt to go for a short course, review an article, or invite be a guest in a be an invited guest, maybe in a symposium or so. So in this case, one can get a certificate or something, but usually when we're talking of the short courses, we're talking of courses up to 6 months. And then when we go to the measurable activities, we're referring to those wherein the learning is structured. It can be a diploma, it can be a postgraduate studies. So those are the structured measurable activities. And remember, at the beginning, I indicated that you are expected to keep a portfolio of evidence. So let's look at what is it that a portfolio of evidence should look like. Firstly, we're saying a portfolio of evidence should be current. If you are submitting CPDs for 2021, your portfolio of evidence should have information on what transpired in 2021. So that's why we're saying it must be current. It must be something on what happened in that year, and it should be valid, and it should be relevant. And please remember, we're not requesting you to upload any portfolio on the online system as you're doing your CPDs, but we're saying keep it in case it is needed for assessment. And when we're talking of the current CPDs, we're saying it must be CPD entry must relate to learning during the 2020, like we are running this workshop to ensure that you comply for the year 2020. Make sure that whatever evidence you're submitting fall under 2020. Nothing should be from 2019. And then when you go to the annual declaration, this is how the landing page will look like. And I want you to understand the two terms, the compliance and archives. When you look at the year there under 2021 and 2020, so this shows that this person has done the annual declaration for 2020 and has also done the annual declaration for 2021, meaning this person complied with the CPD requirement in 2020. That's why the system has allowed him to do the annual declaration in 2021. So what happens is when you look under entries, it shows under 2020, it says archived. This simply means that all the entries that were submitted under the year 2020, once you have met the required number of CPDs, at the end of the year, those CPDs will be archived to open a way for the new submissions of CPDs in 2021. So all the CPDs that this person has submitted in 2020, they are archived, and it shows that this person submitted 26 CPDs in 2020. And then in 2021, the term used there is saying submitted for compliance. So it means the CPDs that were submitted for 2020, they are 10, and they are not archived until 2021 comes to an end. So as long as this person is submitting a CPD, it will highlight there. Colleagues, please remember that Pharmacy Council is not requesting you to attend courses wherein you're given CPD points. Pharmacy Council is not working on a point system, and we only requesting you to submit CPDs on what you're learning as you are practicing. If you opt to attend a course, it's still fine, but Council doesn't really worry much on whether you have learned something while you're practicing or you attended a formal training. And then always remember that there is no assessment for competency. In the case of the pharmacist, the CPDs are submitted for compliance. The competency the CPDs that are assessed for competency are for interns, not pharmacists. And please note that no third-party entries. You are therefore requested to take care of your own submissions, because it is an offense to have somebody submitting the CPDs for you. That's why you have to go to your secured site when you're submitting CPDs, because that should be done by you and not any other person. So avoid giving your details to whoever, and make sure that you take care of your CPD entries. And the other thing is no non-practicing pharmacists in the pharmacy. Remember, all the pharmacists that are practicing in South Africa should have been registered with the South African Pharmacy Council. So anybody who is designated as non-practicing shouldn't be in the pharmacy. And remember that from the 1st of May, those who didn't comply with the CPD requirements will be designated as non-practicing. So make sure that you do your part to avoid being designated as such. And then lastly, we encourage lifelong learning. Remember, when we're talking of an 8-star pharmacist, it's saying a pharmacist is a lifelong learner. And always remember that our profession is one of those professions that are continually changing. So if we don't participate in lifelong learning, we'll end up being behind and not being relevant to what is happening. So that's why we must make sure that we continue to learn so that we remain relevant and current. And the Pharmacy Council has a registration app that is all pharmacists are encouraged to download. And this app, Council developed it so that it can allow the pharmacy personnel to be able to access their digital registration card. Remember that Council is no longer printing those registration cards as before. From now onwards, we're making use of the digital registration cards, which you can access on your mobile app. And you can also upload your picture on your mobile app if you feel the picture that is there on the register of cancer is old. You can always update it on the app. And I'm sorry, the app also allows you to amend your personal details, and it also allows you to access CPD system, meaning you can do your CPD, submit your CPDs using the app if you don't want to go to the other process of going the long way. And so the app is user-friendly, colleagues, and it will make your life easy if you can upload it and start making use of it. With this word, I want to say now we're moving to the next session of questions, which is going to be facilitated by my colleague Raisibe Madirwe. So I want to thank you for listening to me, and let's go and listen to my colleague as she will be taking us through this section. Thank you. Over to you, Raisibe.
Good evening, colleagues. Thank you very much for joining us on today's masterclass. I'm hearing an echo. I'm going to mute myself and just check what's going on. Okay, I'm going to take you through the questions, the question session, the discussions, and also before we go through to discussions, I'm going to take us through the questions that we have received from you when you were enrolling for this course. Some of you did send the questions through. So we will quickly go through those, and we will take your suggestions, we will take your questions, we will have a discussion before we end today's session. We did receive one that I put in the chat box that is asking if I work for SAPRA, the South African Health Regulatory Organization, if I work there, am I required to comply with CPD requirements? And in the presentation, there's where we did mention, there was one of the frequently asked questions, and this one relates to that one, where somebody asked if I work in a regulatory environment, am I then required to comply with the CPD requirements? And our answer is simple. You are a practicing pharmacist. You are practicing X pertaining to the scope of practice of a pharmacist. And as a result, then it is mandatory for you to designate yourself as a practicing pharmacist and thus comply with the CPD requirements. And on the questions, we have a question where we're being asked, do we use the intent manual to complete the CPDs? The answer is no. The CPDs that the interns are completing are very intense. They are different from what is required of you. The interns are still learning. You are the experts, therefore yours is easier. You have the CPD guidance document that is available for you on the website. It's available for you on the secure side if you have logged in, and you can look for it under the CPD system. It is there. And also there is a document named the Competency Standards, which was published in 2018. Please familiarize yourself with those documents in order for you then to be able to comply with your CPD requirements. They do make it easier for you. Can I remain registered if I'm no longer practicing? There is a difference between a registered pharmacist, and somebody who has the qualification but not registered with cancer. A registered pharmacist, actually the definition of a pharmacist according to the Pharmacy Act is somebody who has the qualification and is registered with cancer. If you got the qualification but you are not registered, then we don't call you a pharmacist according to the Pharmacy Act. But there is a difference between a practicing pharmacist and a non-practicing pharmacist. A practicing pharmacist is a pharmacist designated as such on the council system and who complies with the CPD requirements. A non-practicing pharmacist will designate themselves as non-practicing, or council will designate them as such if they don't comply with the CPD requirements after the 30th of April. And a non-practicing pharmacist, they still pay their annual fees, but are not expected to be found in a pharmacy, are not expected to be found practicing any of the acts pertaining to the scope of practice of a pharmacist because they do not comply with the CPD requirements. If I get registered in July, do I still have to complete 6 entries for the year? And this one for me, I always relate it to if you declared yourself as non-practicing in January, sorry, as non-practicing in January, and then in July, the 1st of July, you come back and say, I want to start practicing. So there is that 6 months break. And as a result, your CPD activities will be prorated. You will not be expected to complete 6 CPD activities for that year because you have a 6 months break. So there will be a prorate, then complete 6 CPD entries. And the CPD system does calculate that for you. So it makes it easier for all of us. Must CPD relate specifically to pharmacy? It's not a yes or no answer, but the CPD activities should relate to the practice of a pharmacist, and they should be what you want to fill your knowledge gaps with. It's all up to you what you want to learn, but please make sure it aligns with the 6 domains that we gave you. And these domains are in the Competency Standards document that was published in 2018. Please familiarize yourself with it and select domains that are of interest to you. Can I capture my CPD entry in Word and then transfer it onto the website? By all means, you can do that. What we do not accept is you capturing the CPD activities on Word and sending it to us as a document. Unfortunately, we do not accept that. So please make sure that all your CPD activities are done on the CPD system. It can either be on the app or on the website. If I develop policies and provide training, can this be considered as CPD? This was addressed in the presentation. Yes, these are considered as CPD. So for example, let's say I needed to learn how to develop a standard operating procedure for preventing the transmission of COVID-19 in the workplace. So after I have learned what is it that we need to do to prevent this disease, what are the steps that we need to follow, and I have drafted this standard operating procedure, I can use that as my evidence. Or for example, if I am a manager and I set policies relating to human resource management, how to performance appraise people, for example, then I will go and check a domain that is related to that, check a competency that is related to that, a behavioral statement that relates to that, and use that to do my entry and keep the policies as evidence. So it's all up to you. you decide what you want to learn, and you decide which domains fit in with that. Is CPD compulsory for assistants, the pharmacy support personnel? It's not yet compulsory at the moment. It will be compulsory at some stage. At the moment, Council is still developing the competency standards for pharmacy support personnel. It's going to Council in May. If it gets approved at Council, then it will be published for comments. Please be on the lookout for this document. Provide the comments, and then Council will review those comments. After the review of the comments, they will amend this document, and then they will publish the final document for implementation. After they have done that, after the competency standards for the pharmacy support personnel are implemented, then Council will release a board notice that will then state that the pharmacy support personnel are now required to comply with the CPD requirements. So we are waiting for such a time. Does training by reps count for CPD? I think when we were doing what type of evidence you can submit, when we were doing the learning activities, this was covered there. Must I complete 6 entries if I have been unemployed for the last year? Just a moment for me. Sorry about that. Must I complete 6 entries if I have been unemployed for the last year? I think this was answered. It's answered with where we were asked if a person who was not registered as a pharmacist then gets registered in July, and they want to know if they should comply. But if you are unemployed but did not designate yourself as a non-practicing pharmacist, you will then be required to complete the 6 CPD activities on the system. So if you are unemployed, it's all up to you. You can designate yourself as non-practicing, and you will not be required to comply with the CPD requirements. But please do not do this if you are unemployed, but you do take on odd jobs. You do sometimes, perhaps once a week, still practice acts pertaining to the scope of practice of a pharmacist. Then you are a practicing pharmacist, and as a result, you should then comply. What is the process to apply for extension, condemnation of CPD requirements, for example, due to ill health? Council has already provided pharmacists with a grace period, which is ending on the 30th of April of each year. The actual due date for CPD activities is the 31st of December of each year, in this case of 2020. But if still after the due date, you still feel that you couldn't comply, you were perhaps hospitalized in March, and you couldn't even request for the deferment, there is a deferment process in the guidance documents. It's also outlined in the CPD regulations. Please familiarize yourself with that. Use that to request for deferment with Council. They will discuss it, and they will definitely get back to you and give you options. The deferment process is only given for a maximum of 12 months. Nothing exceeds that. But also there is an option for you to make yourself non-practicing if you are not practicing, and as a result, cannot comply with the CPD requirements due to ill health. This marks the end of my questions. I'm going to open the floor then for questions, suggestions, and discussions. Whilst I'm still waiting for the hands, I see there is a question in the chat box. Before, we would submit a copy of our registration card as proof of current pharmacist registered. Now that we do not receive the registration card, what proof may we submit to SAPRA? I don't think I understand. Can you please unmute your mic and perhaps explain to me what this means? Harris, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. I think you both did quite well. My concern is that I think in any law, there are always exceptions, and I don't think that your regulations are adequate, because there are pharmacists who, by nature of their work, are constantly involved in professional development, and that they should be allowed exemption. The problem, so that's just one statement. The problem that I have is that I don't see a standardized evaluation system that you have in place for the levels of learning. These levels of learning, as you know, is a required law that it's linked to the NQF system. And I don't see the South African Pharmacy Council linking it to the NQF system, which is a legal requirement. People can go and read 6 articles, and other people can be doing intensive work, and then suddenly something can qualify as 25 credits where somebody's putting 1. The credit system clearly to me does not make sense. I've looked at it before, and yeah. So really, I think you must comply with the law as well, Over.
That is noted, sir, but at the moment, that is not the route that Council is taking. Council is not assessing the CPDs that are submitted by pharmacists. The main aim, the main purpose of the CPD is for pharmacists to keep themselves abreast with the information, for them to learn at their own pace, according to their own practice, and keep themselves informed according to what they are practicing in. So as a result, at the moment, there are no points that are allocated to this, and Council's system does not work on points as well. Estelle, please ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I just want to ask in terms of these, as for example, myself, I'm not in the country at the moment. So I don't work in South Africa in a pharmacy. I'm not seen as a full pharmacist overseas because I've got to go and do all of the conversions, etc. But I do work in a pharmacy. Can I still submit CPDs and be seen as practicing?
There is an option to mark yourself as a non-practicing pharmacist, since you are all means if you don't want.
And you did mention that you practice in UK, but maybe the short answer to your question, it would be better that already, because you are providing the scope of practice of a pharmacist, you said that you work in a pharmacy, you continue participating in CPD and designating yourself. The first system we developed was aligned to the UK system, but we tweaked it a little bit to look at our South African requirement. I must safely say that even with the regulation and the guideline document, we always publish our documents for comments. The regulation were published for 6 months. We did receive the comments from the profession. We did consider those comments, and we did respond back where we felt the need that we need to do that. We also did run a number of workshops when we started with the CPD so that we can gauge that the South African market or the South African pharmacists understand where we're going. There were so many things. There were some studies that we also did where we ran surveys, and we also appointed people that from different provinces that we wanted them to be our pioneers. And that's when we were fine-tuning the system. So there was a lot of consultation that we did, but I can safely say that we did some international benchmarking. Other countries are very, very high up there in terms of how they do the assessment and what they require. We thought that we start at the level where we accommodate myself, who's working for Pharmacy Council, and those professors and those doctors, that we start with a system that will be accommodative for all of us. Our intention is that we need to continue learning. It's not about getting distinctions because you are a prof and you Mojo getting 1%. No, it's for us to continuously ensure that we learn. And we know that we are learning every day. We're just saying, record it for us. Lastly, I also want to mention that, and I've seen some profs and some doctors in the team. I was glad to see the names. They were part of the team that we discussed where should we pitch our CPDs. So we were guided by the academics in terms of what would be a well-encouraging system for everybody else to participate, that I'm doing that BPharm degree again. And it was well received. So maybe with time, as the council change, maybe we will go to another level. But so far, the approach that was taken by council, there was consultation, and we did get the buy-in, the support, so that our main intention was to accommodate everyone, but to make sure that as Pharmacy Council, we know that we are encouraging our professionals to continuously learn, but yet to record it. And we've also noted that when you go to other countries, this is the requirement, because most of the countries are very far when it comes to CPD. So we had to start, and this was just like the starting step for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Really appreciate it. I will comment that is asking what should the card. It says, what proof may we submit to SAPRA? I still don't understand this question, but my attempt will be, a registration card is now available on the SAPC registration app. So if you cast your picture there, if an inspector of council or an inspector of SAPRA comes to the pharmacy they came to inspect and they would like to see your registrations card, if perhaps your employer wants evidence that you are registered as a practicing pharmacist, this evidence is available on the SAPC website under the finance. It comes with the proof of registration. There's something there that will say, it will state if you are practicing or non-practicing. And also I see a comment from Enos responding to the question about SAPRA that is saying, managers and SAPRA will need to verify practicing pharmacists online. There will be no need to print out the card. Thank you very much, Mr. Maluleke. Yes, that is the case. They are able to verify it online, and also they can give us a list of who works for them, and we can give them, if those people are practicing or they are non-practicing, but the information is available on. Thank you very much. The floor is still open for discussions, suggestions, and questions. I see a hand. Estelle, your hand is still up.
Yes, I've just got another question, if you don't mind. Do some of the submissions that we make have to be peer reviewed? Or is that not a requirement?
Thank you for asking that question. Peer review is there for you. It's not compulsory. It's a voluntary exercise that you can do if you want your colleague or your peer to then check the CPD in order then for them to, assist you, put you in line, provide comments, but it is not compulsory.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Auntie Vasi, I see your hand.
Hello, hi, good evening. Yes, I thank you for a brilliant presentation first by Tebang, and then you in taking us through the questions. Well done. In terms of the two-step cycle and the four-step cycle, can one actually have a mixture of that in one annual CPD submission? I mean, like if you start to do it, do you have to always do a four-step cycle? Or can you also do another one with a two-step cycle? Can you have a mixture of it?
Yes, you can. It's all up to you. But on the two-step cycle, only a maximum of 3 activities per annum is allowed.
Yeah.
But it is all up to you. You can submit 3, or you can submit 5, 1. It's all up to you. But on the two-step one, a maximum of 3 is allowed per year.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks. And just my last comment on the CPD. You know, I'm sure that there's lots of attendees on this webinar. Just to say that when we attended the lifelong conference, I'm not sure whether it was the one in Brisbane or the one in, or there's another international country, and the South African Pharmacy Council was complimented on their implementation of the CPD, and it was actually very much in comparison to countries like the UK, the US, New Zealand, Australia, to the point where they've actually asked the South African Pharmacy Council delegation to serve on one of the international bodies for CPD. So just to make all pharmacists feel very comfortable,
Thank you very much, Prof. Naidu. Much appreciated input over there. Okay, I see there is a question in the comments. I've tried downloading the SAPC registration app, but it always tells me that I put in invalid login details. There is an option there for you to say that you forgot your password, and it will then give you the password. Please use it. But if it still gives you a problem, Natalie has provided an email address in there. Please contact us using it. We will get back to you. And I see Mrs. Mogana is saying that the LLL was in Croatia. Thank you very much. Prof. Naidu, I see your hand is still up?
sorry, ma'am, it's the old Anne from an old Ed. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you very much, colleagues, for attending this session. We really appreciate you. Are there any further questions, comments, suggestions? Mr. Kotsia?
Hello, good evening, people. I'm 62 years of age now. I'm not really planning to retire, but I feel a bit pressurized with the time schedule of this CPD, whether I'm going to make it in the next 3 years. So I was thinking of taking the easy way and take a simple article like Vermox to give a rundown of how Vermox works and what it can be used for. But now I'm practicing in government in a managerial area. So I don't know if those things will be applicable to that. Can I still use something like diabetes screening, or will that be frowned upon in the CPDs? Thank you. Over.
Thank you, sir. It will not be frowned upon. As we have said, CPD is what you are interested in learning, is what you would really like to fill your knowledge gaps in. It's all up to you, and nobody is dictating anything. So if that's what you would like to use, then by all means, you can use it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Zianda, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, colleagues. Thanks, Raisibe. Just to add on what you have elucidated, just to clarify, at the beginning of the slides, we were shown the competency standards for pharmacists. The interesting part there is that the work that is in the competency standards is not only clinical. You find management, issues about management, issues about self-development. So you could also be doing something about management, which enhances your role as a pharmacist in a managerial role. You would be able to fit it in the competency standards. So, but as Raisibe has said, whichever area of learning that you would want to learn about, I can promise you, if you check against the competency standards, you would find that you'd be able to suit it there and then submit your CPD activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Zianda. Mr. Harris, I see your hand is up.
Thank you for the presentation. Two things. One, just will you be able to send a copy of the presentation to the participants here? And two, the previous speaker, Geert, does excellent work with me, and the kind of work he does is planning out the COVID strategy for the future. So Geert, perhaps you should use that as your topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. The presentation, yes, it will be made available to all of you. And also the recording of this will be available on Facebook, as this is live streaming, as well as on YouTube. Thank you. Spumelele?
Thank you much, colleagues.
Spumelele, please ask.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I would like to find out for the reflection title. Does it need to be?
I'll appreciate it if you can switch off the background noise.
Yeah, I'm trying to. For the reflection title, does it have to be specific? Shush, Tinigo. For when it says reflection title, can you just write like a whole sentence, or does it have to be formal and straight to the point?
It has to relate to the domain. So it's something that you will need to structure. So I don't understand when you say if it can be a whole sentence.
Yeah, because I'm struggling with this as well, because also, when you see primary activity, it says self-study, casual reading. Can you just do everything and just say self-study?
But that's not a title. Self-study will not be your title, even if you have self-studied.
When they say, okay, fine, the reflection title, it's fine, I will write whatever I see I need to write. But I'm saying for when they say choose primary activity, they say breakfast, meetings, case study, discussion, on-the-job learning. So if I can just put, if I'm doing all the domains, can I just put self-study? Or Does it matter?
If what you did was a self-study, then yes, you can do that.
So
But
it's on.
the reason we have all those there,
Yeah.
Taban did explain when she was explaining the learning activities that there are different types of learning activities. And we keep on explaining this over and over again because we do have people that ask, how should I learn? And when we answer that, we will then say there are measurable activities that you can do, which can be when you registered yourself for a short course. That's an example. Or there are the non-measurable ones where you have attended a webinar like this one, or where you went to a conference and you learned, where you read an article, you spoke to a colleague, or you were watching TV and you actually did learn. So it is all up to you. Hence, we are saying that then that you will need to then sit down. And if you feel you're still struggling with this, the guidance document has a personal development plan. Please go through the guidance document. I think it's Annexure B. In there, it assists you in planning your CPD activities. It assists you in finding out what are the things that you need to learn, what are the things that you're struggling with. Then you will be able to know if you need to learn using non-measurable activities, measurable activities, or the structured ones.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see there is a question in the comment, but it has been answered by a comment as well by Mrs. Mfuko. So by 30 April 2021, we need to submit 3 times 2 step and 3 times 4 step CPD, correct? Okay, that confuses me. But a pharmacist is required to complete 6 CPD activities per annum. So for 2020, this was supposed to be completed by the 31st of December, the 6 CPD activities. And for those who couldn't do that, Council provided a grace period, and this grace period ends on the 30th of April of 2021. It's a grace period. And then for you to complete this, there are 2 different cycles. You choose a cycle that you are confident in, that makes life easy for you, but is per year. So you cannot enter more than 3 using that cycle. So if you decide to enter 3 on the 2 step, and then you can enter 3 on the 4 step, and you will comply with your CPD activities for 2020. But we are not saying it's a must. We are not saying we are dictating for you to use that. It is all up to you. I hope I have addressed your question. Spumelela, I see your hand is up. Is it a new hand or?
No, sorry, it's an old hand.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, suggestions, comments? Colleagues, thank you very much for joining us on today's masterclass. We really appreciate your time. I see there's a comment that say, can this session be regarded as a CPD award? I worry when we're still talking about awards and points. But yes, you can use this session if you have learned to complete your CPD activities. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. We will end today's session here. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks to the Pharmacy Council for putting this initiative together. Very much welcome. Bye.